good place where truth and integrity meet. Every week, I introduce you to thought provoking and compelling premier educators, politicians, whistleblowers, best-selling authors, journalists, activists, and celebrities. They all have one thing in common: they are people of truth and integrity, and many are considered modern-day heroes. Today, I have with me Kelly Sadler. She is a former American political staffer, a former journalist and columnist. She wrote Cooler, a daily blog for the Washington Times website, and was a regular contributor to the Times on political issues. She served as a special assistant to the president in the White House Office of Communications from May 2017 to June 2018. Sadler has a Bachelor of Arts degree in Chinese and International Relations from Hamilton College. She has a master's degree in broadcast journalism from Northwestern University. Sadler worked in strategy consulting for Kaiser Associates and later as a Bloomberg news reporter from 2009 to 2011. She subsequently was a reporter and editor for the Washington Times. Her work has appeared on Fox News, U.S. News and World Report, and the Albany Times Union. She has appeared numerous times on political shows, including The O'Reilly Factor, Hannity, and Media Buzz. So welcome to the show, Kelly.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, I'd like to go back to when you were a journalist. I know that in January 2015, you garnered significant media attention when you alleged the political donor George Soros had given at least $33 million in 1 year to support activist groups during the Ferguson protests. Your allegations were reported in outlets including Newsmax, Fox, the Daily Mail, the New York Daily News, and Daily Beast. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Certainly. I just went through the Open Society Foundation, basically their tax returns, and saw who they were giving money to. And then looked at these organizations and spoke to several of these organizations who were mobilizing activists to go to Ferguson to protest on behalf of Black Lives Matter. And we're seeing those networks today, in many of these cities emerge. But it was funny when I was doing that article, as I was reaching out to these multiple organizations that received grants from George Soros. Their talking points were the same. It was like they were reading off of the exact same script, and that's why I knew that this wasn't an organic thing. This was, yes, there was multiple organizations involved, but there was, one person at the top who was kind of dictating these actions.
And then you wrote another important article. I know that you alleged that the Clinton Foundation had collected $26 million in donations for fundraising arm in Sweden. At the time, the country was lobbying CI State Department to forego sanctions that threatened business connections with Iran.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Clinton Foundation was one of the world's best, pay-to-play operations that there possibly was, profiting off of, Bill Clinton's presidency and Hillary Clinton's future presidency. And, while she was in the State Department, they were also active making deals with the donating to the Clinton Foundation as, the State Department was working out these diplomatic efforts overseas. It was something to behold, and I'm sure there's still more reporting that can be done on the Clinton Foundation. Unfortunately, or fortunately for them, they've shuttered their doors, and their donations are way down after Hillary Clinton lost the presidency.
And currently, you've been involved with the super PACs, and I know you hold a high position there. So why don't you share that with everybody? And I know you've been extremely busy. Maybe share what your job really is or what it entails.
Yeah, so I'm working for America First Action Super PAC, which is the officially sanctioned super PAC for the president's reelection. We're focusing on swing states, basically states that will decide the election, that are expensive to play in, and that we won in 2016, and we're going to need to win again. States like Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin. We're looking into Arizona now as well. We're running ads in those states currently in the industrial Midwest, going after Joe Biden's his economic record, right? His support of NAFTA, which lost hundreds of thousands of jobs, outsourced those. His support of China, which, him granting permanent trade relations to China, which further, killed manufacturing in the industrial Midwest. And then in Pennsylvania in particular, we're focused on his Green New Deal. And, AOC is on his committee for his reelect, guiding his policy in that area. And he said he wanted to ban all fossil fuels, including phasing out fracking and banning fracking, which would leave Pennsylvania. It cost Pennsylvania over 600,000 jobs alone. So Joe Biden is definitely not the man to rebuild our economy post the coronavirus. Donald Trump is, and we're trying to lay that record out to these voters in the swing states.
And in general, what is the purpose of super PACs?
The purpose of super PACs is that we can take unlimited donations from wealthy individuals, whereas the campaign and the RNC, donations are capped. And we will supplement the campaign. As a campaign, when we go up on air for a couple weeks in these states, the campaign goes down, then we'll go back up again. It's really to supplement and help the campaign best allocate the resources that they have in the states and allow them the flexibility to play in some states that we didn't win in 2016, like New Hampshire, like Minnesota, like New Mexico.
Okay, but with these unlimited donations and the donators themselves, wouldn't they somehow sway some of Trump's political decisions?
No, they absolutely have nothing to do with the White House. We are firewalled off. We can't speak to the campaign. We can't speak to the White House. These are donors who believe in our country, who believe in the president's agenda, and want to see him reelected in 2020.
Well, thanks for that. Thanks for educating our public and our listeners as to what that is. So I'm going to backtrack a little bit. When did your interest in politics begin?
I've always been interested in politics ever since I was in high school, writing for the local paper. I've always been interested in politics and writing and diverged from that a little bit in my early career, but went over to China, spent a couple years living in China. And that's when, I really found my conservatism in the fact that things are so restrictive over in China. You can't get on the internet and just look up any site that you want. I was over there during the SARS outbreak where we knew little to nothing about the disease or the contagion of it. We're told things were perfectly fine, and having to call back home to the States to say, no, this is actually a problem. It's when you go into an ice cream store and there's two flavors, it's vanilla or chocolate. It's a completely different way of life. There is no freedoms. There is no freedom of expression. There are no individual rights. And it was just something, to witness firsthand was very impactful. And then coming back to the States, I was like, we live in the greatest country on earth. And, I definitely to get more into politics after having that experience.
And with China and the COVID-19, I would at least give them credit for handling the COVID better than the SARS situation. But there's so much talk about that this was unleashed, the COVID was unleashed on the public, and there was a lot of angles and reasons as to why that happened. What's your opinion on that?
Well, we still don't really know, right? China did not allow U.S. inspectors to go over to its Wuhan laboratory and inspect it. We know that it's lied to the WHO, and the WHO subsequently lied to the world about how contagious this was. We know that they shut down their Wuhan laboratory, that the cell service was blocked on that in the fall of last year, which indicates that the Chinese knew about this virus long before they alerted the international community about it, and then tried to downplay its spread. So yeah, the president was absolutely right in shutting down travel to China very early on in January, which did save hundreds of thousands of lives. And we're still not getting the real story from China. I know that Secretary Pompeo has been, very outspoken, and this is the Wuhan virus, and that, you need to allow the State Department and our inspectors to go in and see what the origins of this. They don't even have the samples that they need. We're in the process of working on vaccinations, and we don't even have the original origins of this disease being given to us by China. So there's a lack of cooperation and transparency with that country that has been problematic for decades upon decades.
Mm-hmm. And did you agree with Trump's initial response here in America? Because it seemed to me he was trying to play it down a little bit. What do you think about that?
Well, I don't think we knew much about it, right? I mean, because
Right.
and we're still learning. We're still learning more and more about this disease as we experience it here in the United States. But the information flow, I think, was purposely stopped by China, and then there was a lot of misinformation that was put out by the WHO to the international community on how to deal with this. And I think that as soon as our scientists and the CDC and others started looking at this, as more information became available, the president, gave us more information. And there was a lot of mainstream news media that was also downplaying the coronavirus. If you recall, when we first were kind of alerted about this was during President Trump's impeachment. And the only thing that the press wanted to focus on was impeachment. It was 24/7 on the daily, on the broadcast news networks and the cable news networks. And there was little to no mention of coronavirus. Tucker Carlson did give it mention, as did Lou Dobbs, but it was really not on anybody's radar. So I would also point, if you say the president was slow to respond, I'd also point that there was a lot of those in the mainstream media who weren't even interested in this topic until it became a blown out pandemic.
Mm-hmm. And I'm going to give you some talking points. I'll just bring up the topic, and I'd like to hear what you have to say on them. The economy. What do you think is happening with our economy right now?
Well, our economy it definitely was performing on all cylinders. 3 months ago, we had the greatest economy in the world. It was the envy of the world. We've had to shut down our economy, unfortunately, in the last 3 months. And the Congress has been working with the White House to do everything they can to try to keep small businesses afloat. The PPP loans were, very beneficial to so many businesses out there. But now it's time the whole idea of shutting the economy down was to flatten the curve. And we have done that. We're not going to stop the virus. We're not going to, abolish it. We're going to have to learn to live with it. And we know now how to do that, to socially distance, to wear our masks, to wash our hands, have proper hygiene. But businesses can do this. They can reopen. We can reopen smartly. We also know the populations now that are most affected. It's people with underlying conditions and the elderly. That younger children don't seem to be affected by this much, and that schools should reopen in the fall because you know what? In order to get the economy back going, people need to be able to send their children back to school.
You don't find that to be dangerous?
I don't find that to be dangerous, given the information of what the official information of the stats on children. Children don't seem to be carriers of this disease and don't seem to be spreading it. And if they do contract it, they don't. The side effects on them is minimal compared to if you're 65 or older.
Mm-hmm. And we're talking about some of these payments that were dispersed to small businesses and the like. I was watching a news piece last night, and they were talking about people still having problems. Like they called in to be able to receive a payout, and there was no money left. What do you think happened?
There's remaining funds in the PPP. They've actually extended it a couple weeks for small businesses to capitalize on this program, and the money was refurbished, I think, in a second round of legislation that Congress passed. It's essential. I think there's a lot of businesses that were reluctant to take the money because it was just for an 8-week time frame. And then as the lockdowns became extended, they extended those terms. So it's not just for 8 weeks, but there is, I think they shut down the official program a couple days ago, but the SBA is out and ready. The Small Business Association is out there ready to assist and lend to small businesses that need the help outside the PPP loans.
What about the individuals and households that There's people that are unemployed and they're running out of unemployment, and there's people getting evicted. We have the highest rate of eviction notices than we've ever had historically.
Yeah, in New York City, I was reading 1/3 of residents didn't pay their mortgages or their rent payments, and that's a very scary statistic. With individuals, people are getting unemployment, and one of the things that we're looking and Congress is looking to do is to make sure that those unemployment benefits do not exceed the money that they were making when they were going to work. That's a disincentive to go back to work. So those things will be looked at. I know that the White House is looking at a possible third round of stimulus, but I think it's important before any further stimulus is passed that we see what worked and what didn't work in the first two rounds.
Yeah, that's the Republican stance. I'm aware of that. I know they're a little more reserved and allotting more money to the community.
Well, the government is not going to be able to support, the 300 million plus Americans living in this country. We need to get out and that's not the basis of how this country was formed. We need to get out and we need to reopen. And, this economy, the backbone of this economy is small businesses and it's entrepreneurs. And those people need to be encouraged to reopen and to get their livelihoods back. And then workers who are making more money with the federal unemployment benefits, I don't blame them at all for wanting to stay home and not go back to work, but those do need to be readjusted so that people get back out and do things safely, responsibly. But the people of this nation are the engine of our economic growth, not the federal government.
And in light of everything that's going on, would you like to comment on healthcare and the healthcare in general as well, and the insurance plans and everything that's going on? Because we know the low income demographic is really the group of people that are suffering the most, and you can see that when you look at some of the low-income hospitals in New York and what's happened there. They don't seem to be getting the same treatment and therefore have a higher percentage of deaths due to the COVID.
Yeah, we're seeing the African American community being disproportionately affected by COVID. A lot of people in these urban areas that live very closely together and can't and live with family members and can't socially distance. They are disproportionately affected by COVID. But the thing with insurance and with healthcare is that we've got the best healthcare in the world. People come from other countries to go to our hospitals. We flatten the curve. We don't have, our systems are not overrun. They're working. Every state, the stance for the Republicans is we want to have more competition across state lines, more plans, not less plans, so that everyone can get covered, but can do so at a cost competitive price. And in order to do that is to deregulate and to really make sure that these insurance companies can compete with one another.
Yeah, I do understand these insurance companies. It's really difficult to find reasonable payments or installments to be paid, because I know for myself, I am paying $600 a month and I'm a fairly healthy person. That's just me in my household. So
yes,
that definitely needs to be addressed.
Yeah. So we need to have just more choice, more options, and then you can pick the plan that works for you. But if you only have a provider or two providers in a state, that limits the choice that you have, and as well as raises the price.
Mm-hmm. And let's go back to education. So there's talk about, I'm looking at some of the hot topics right now, and it says the nation has $1.5 trillion in student debt. And that's led to fierce debate on how to make colleges more affordable. Would you like to comment on that?
Well, I mean, colleges right now, the fact that Harvard is charging the same tuition it was pre-COVID, is absurd. The college experience is to be on campus, to use, all of the facilities on campus, to attend in-person classes. It's to join a sorority or fraternity, to volunteer. It's a community, and when you're saying that you're not going to bring kids back on campus, everything's virtual learning, and you're still going to charge, $50,000 a year for that, that to me just doesn't make sense as a parent of a child. There's a lot of choices now in schools. These Ivy League schools, yes, they've got the big names and the big stature, but there's different, online schools. We know that Liberty University has a great online program. Phoenix says there's a lot of alternatives to these 4-year schools, 2-year schools that then go into 4-year schools that make college more affordable and shouldn't be stigmatized. And I think that Ivanka Trump and the president believe in that and are working to encourage different, if you want to go into an apprenticeship, or if you want to go and get a work, if you want to go and work in construction and get your degree while working in construction, you should be able to do that, and it shouldn't be stigmatized.
Mm-hmm. What about climate change? Is that something that concerns you personally?
It's nothing that concerns me personally.
Okay.
I think we're facing bigger issues in the world at this moment. First is, getting this virus under control and searching for a vaccination. And then it's going to be, rebuilding the economy and getting people who've been put out of work back in the workplace.
Mm-hmm. And what about abortion? That seems to be a hot topic that is kind of came to the top again. I mean, it seemed like in the past couple of years that has become a more heated discussion.
Well, I'm pro-life, unapologetically pro-life. I believe that, life begins at conception. So I'm not going to alter that stance in terms of Roe v. Wade. That's still on the books. But it's something that, everyone has, I respect everybody's beliefs on this. The law of the land is the law of the land still, but I am pro-life.
Okay, great. And let's see, what are some of the things? Let's talk about Trump a little bit more, since you do know him well. What did you see? What kind of character did you see within this man? I know you're still working for him technically, so I'm just curious, just to hear the pros and cons, what you saw his strengths to be, and maybe if you're comfortable, what his weaknesses were.
Well, the president is not a politician, and that's the first thing that I liked about him. That's what I saw on the campaign trail in 2016 when I was covering the 2016 election, is that he speaks differently. He's from a different background. He's a businessman. He knows how to make deals. He also loves this country. He is a true patriot. He believes, a rising tide lifts all boats, and he came in with a very strong set of things that he wanted to accomplish, and he has accomplished a lot of those things, renegotiating these trade deals, bringing back American jobs to American soil. He did this with the USMCA, with Canada and Mexico. He did this with China in a phase 1 trade deal that might be, we're gonna have to keep looking at it, but it was a total breakthrough and amazing, and something that he campaigned on and truly believes in, is very decisive in his actions. Also on foreign policy, in terms of getting us out of the Iranian nuclear deal. It was something that he said he was going to do. He did it. He said he was going to name Jerusalem the capital of Israel and put the embassy there, and he has done so. He said he'd get us out of the Paris Climate Accord. He did so. These were all very controversial things in Washington, but it's what his supporters elected him to do, and he followed through courageously.
Mm-hmm. What about his weaknesses?
The president is the president. He's authentic. He is real. He's not going to change his personality. I know a lot of people complain about the tweeting and the brashness. He is a New York, billionaire, real estate developer. He is who he is, and I like his authenticity. And so, if you want to, it's a style over substance issue with many voters who don't like his style. But the substance in terms of achieving the conservative agenda is absolutely there, and he's delivered like no other president in my lifetime on achieving those things.
Mm-hmm. And people also complained about his lack of eloquence when he's speaking and things like that as well. But we do.
Yeah,
we
he's
do know
not
that
a politician.
actions, yeah. And actions speak louder than words anyways.
Absolutely.
Okay, looks like we're coming up to a commercial here pretty soon. Let's see what else we can touch upon before we head to it. I'd love to talk about your book when we get back from our break. Or your
Okay, I
blog.
don't have a book.
Well,
Yeah,
just
I don't
you have
have
a blog. Maybe we can talk about that in further detail. And let's see, where, okay, let's talk about who you're working for, so this organization now.
Yes. So the chair of the organization is Linda McMahon. She was in the president's cabinet. She was the former SBA administrator. She came on when I came on. I love working with her. She's a wonderful woman, doing a lot of fundraising and strategy in terms of where we need to focus and where our resources need to be allocated in order to win this election in 2020.
Mhm. She has a meeting coming up very soon, so we're just going to finish up here, and I'd love to hear about who she's working with, her website, and more about the organization.
Yeah, absolutely. To learn more about America First Action, you can go to www.a1apac.org. That will show you can donate if you're so inclined, that kind of give you information of what the Super PAC is doing. You can also go to America First Policies. That is our C4, it's our policy wing. That's at americafirstpolicies.org. We are doing the Great American Comeback Tour. We've been out on the road with Vice President Pence in states like Michigan and Pennsylvania. I've got more scheduled on the docket. And also to learn more about what policies we need to enact to reopen our economy safely, soundly, and get Americans back to work.
Sounds like a good plan. Well, thank you so much, Kelly. I've really enjoyed this conversation with you, and I'll go ahead and end the show early. So good luck to you, and good luck for the election, and hopefully we'll get a chance to speak soon in the future.
All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.